New? New, you say? What's new? I'll tell you what's new. All kinds of stuff is new. Okay, maybe just 3 or 4 things. But they're cool. They're super cool. Hello, Minders. Just thought I'd do a show and tell for you today. I've got 3 new things I want to show you. I'll throw in a 4th that I don't actually have yet, but I can still kind of show you what's going on. And it's all in one category: sketchbooks. Sketchbooks and paper pads, that kind of a thing. And they're really cool. And they're all relatively new. And we in the watercolor community don't get a lot of new stuff. I mean, completely new. So this is a real treat. So we'll just take a brief first look at each one of these things. And I think you're going to love it. Yeah, well, I know. I love brand new stuff. I mean, you can't not love it, right? I'm too old to love new stuff. Thanks. But I don't look as old as you do. Anyway, let's take a look at what I've got. Alright, first up is the Hahnemühle ZigZag book. This is pretty cool. You may be familiar with an accordion style sketchbook. And essentially that's what this is. And it comes in 3 sizes, 3 book sizes, and a mini. The book sizes are A6, which is 4.13 by 5.83 inches, and A5, 5.83 by 8.27 inches, and a square, 5.5 by 5.5. And then this little mini, which is not on this list, this is a 2" by 2", 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter. Now, I haven't even opened these, so let's go ahead and do that. The great little light carry sketch options if you want something small or something that will be like a continuing story, you know, like panoramic. Isn't that cute? You can do a kind of a continuing panoramic scene, or you can treat it like a regular sketchbook. Now, these are pulp paper books. As many of you know, I'm not fond of pulp, but I will say that their pulp paper sketchbook is one of the best if you're going to paint on pulp, non-cotton sketchbook. I've done a little testing. This is also a Hahnemühle sketchbook, and I was pleasantly surprised. For line and wash especially, I think it works pretty well for getting into painting without a lot of layers. I did some glazing tests, and like most pulp paper, you pretty much can't glaze on it, but for a sketchbook, it's pretty good paper. My favorite pulp sketchbook to this point had been the Pentalic or the Global Arts, and I think this compares comparable with those. Let's take a look at the A5. This is the biggest of their 3 or 4. Kind of an interesting format on their elastic, the way it goes over like that. It's the same on the mini. Doesn't really work like that. That's kind of the way you're used to seeing them, but that works pretty well. Again, you can treat it like a regular sketchbook. Or open it up, have accordion style, and turn it over and paint on the other side. This would be great for people who like to journal in a storytelling style, maybe with a lot of hand-drawn type and whatnot. So there you go, the Hahnemühle ZigZag book. Now I will put such links as I can get. Some of this stuff is new and may not be on Amazon, but I'll put what links I can find. And if you keep watching, I'm sure it will eventually be available. Next up, Stonehenge Aqua. Watercolor paper, but it's black, 100% black. Oh my goodness. Now, I don't know how much I would use this. I may fiddle around with it. Obviously, I think you're probably going to want to use something like gouache. Mixed media comes to mind. Acrylic, since acrylic can be used. In fact, this is my favorite way to use acrylic, is on watercolor paper. But it's a 100% cotton watercolor paper. Supposedly, if it's Stonehenge Aqua, will stand up to wet washes really well. I'm thinking that card makers, people who use like opaque watercolor markers or pens or watercolor sticks that are opaque and then can re-wet, are going to love stuff like this. I'm still trying to think through how I would use it. This may bring something to mind for you viewers out there, so put it in the comments if automatically you think, oh wow. I do think it would be a really great mixed media paper. Being 100% cotton and being a watercolor paper, you could use pencil to your heart's content on there for opaque mediums, maybe even pastel. I don't know. Just some experimenting is going to have to be done. Now, the one thing I wanted to do right here, right now, on camera is a little gouache. So I'm going to pull out my little tin of Holbein gouache, paint a little tree there just to see what's going on. Looks like it'd be really neat. Little dusky twilight scenes. Could see this really being useful for calligraphers or hand letterers. If you have an opaque marker, I don't know, I'm just trying anything. Maybe a little dusky twilight scene, you know. It's already fun to play with, even if I'm not quite sure what I would do with it yet. Any gouache you put down just showing up really, really well. You know, if you're into painting night skies, there are a lot of little night sky nebula galaxy tutorials on YouTube. Most of them require, of course, you to put in dark washes. But this could do little sort of nebula kind of galaxy effects. And get your water on there to your heart's content, I'm assuming. Fun, 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 fun. I'm not an expert letterer, but, and this is probably not the best lettering brush. I just grabbed something to quickly do this. Terrible lettering, but you get the point. Got these Faber Castell Gelatos, which I've never used. It's really not my thing, but I have been curious about them. They're sort of an opaque pastel chalk. They're about the consistency of oil pastel. Ooh, yeah, they show up really well. And if you want to try Faber Castell Gelatos, this would be the paper to do it on. A real creamy, buttery kind of a consistency. I've just kind of been wondering what I would do with them. Again, I can see this being great for crafters, card makers, just to add another mixed media surface to your arsenal. I think it'd be interesting to try acrylic on this, because I like to paint acrylic in a watercolor fashion on watercolor paper. I don't like to paint acrylic on canvas. And if I were needing dark background, well, there you go. Add a few stars to my little galaxy there. Yeah, so Stonehenge Aqua Cold Press Black. 100% cotton. Don't forget that part. That's kind of the most interesting part of it all. All right, what else we got? Now, I will admit this one probably excited me the most. Since I'm a painter, I like to do plein air. I love good sketchbooks, and I love cotton paper. And I keep wondering when more paper makers, watercolor paper makers, are going to get on board with the idea that most advanced watercolor painters like cotton paper. And Strathmore seems to be responding to that need. So here we have Strathmore 100% cotton watercolor travel journals. They've got 2 watercolor travel journals. These are pretty high quality. They're paper bound. I'm hoping they'll do it in their hardbound version like they do the 400, the Strathmore 400. But regardless, you can buy like leather covers for these things. These are high quality stitched sewn bindings. They have a nice little sort of rubber strap to keep them closed. That's pretty neat. Now this is what they sent me. I don't think they have, I believe these are the sizes available. 7 by 10, 5.5 by 8 inch on the journals. And then they have these pads, these tear-off pads. This is the Watercolor Travel Pad in a nice little horizontal landscape format. Well, I say landscape, you could turn it this way if you wanted to paint something like a bookmark or a vertical painting. 100% cotton, that's nice. And this travel pad, this is just in a tear-off pad. So it's nice and compact, to bring with you. I really love this idea. And the tear-off pads are 6x8, and I have an 8x10 here. Just bound on one edge is the tear-off pad. They call them travel pads. It's just a basic tear-off pad. This, I think, is probably the coolest thing. I'm really interested in this. The paper looks to be a little different. In the watercolor tear-off pads, this is more natural color with a slightly different texture. Looks more hot press here. So I find that interesting. They're all 100% cotton though. So I'm going to do a super quick spontaneous painting here. Just a little tree grouping or something, I don't even know. I'm using a lot of water, so we'll give it a good wet test here. From experience, I could tell just by the way it soaks in that it acts like cotton, how different that is from pulp. We'll switch brushes real quick because that one's a little too moppy and wet. Tell you, it does everything I want it to do. You know, the water and the paint. Give that a minute to dry. You know, when you're using great paper, it's just fun. You don't want to stop. Wow. I know you're getting a glare on the camera. Sorry about that. If I can hold it up a little bit. Okay, I went ahead and put this on an easel for you just to eliminate that glare. This is all dry, and I did a little bit of branch stuff. And I wanted to just real quick see how well the paper lifted or reacted to some scrubbing. I mean, I'm really impressed by this as a sketchbook. This is just what we've been needing. There's sizing in there, but it's not like overdone. Let me get out an actual scrubber. Nice, I'm able to scrub away the edges pretty well. Let me do a little bit of glazing, layering. And based on how it's scrubbed up, I know the glazing's gonna work pretty well. Problem with pulp paper is the underlying paint lifts up too easy. And this is doing just great. I mean, for a sketchbook, yeah. Good job, Strathmore. Way to go. Yeah, so I'm happy. Alright, so in a future episode, I'll probably try out these tear-off pads. The watercolor paper seems to be a little bit different in finish, a little more hot press. All of these, by the way, are 140 pound. Sometimes in a sketchbook you will get 90 pound paper, but these are all 140 pounds, so that's great. Alright, and let's just talk briefly about the Perfect Sketchbook. This is not totally new news, and I was hoping to have one example here by the time I did this video, but I haven't received it yet. But you all remember that I use the Perfect Sketchbook. I've talked about it in social media posts. It's no longer made. Erwin Leon, the gentleman who did this, did it on a Kickstarter. I ended up with 3 or 4 of them, and it's just a really wonderful sketchbook with Fabriano Artistico paper. And many of you have since asked, where do I get that? Where do I get that? Erwin decided not to make them anymore. But, and here's the news, some of you I know have already heard this, and you've alerted me to it. Etchr Labs is picking up the Perfect Sketchbook and will be making the Perfect Sketchbook. It's going to look a little differently. They're selling it now on a Kickstarter, and I'm guessing they're going to continue to make that in an ongoing fashion. They've got 2 or 3 different versions. So if you want to look into that, go over to etchrlabs.com and you'll probably find a link. I'll also include it down in the description, and you can go see what they're doing with the Perfect Sketchbook. I think it's just great. I have tried to move back to just all cotton sketchbooks, unless I'm doing line and wash or gouache. Then I'll use pulp, but there are more ways for you to do that now, and I think it's just great. And I hope more makers will get into the act of making all cotton watercolor sketchbooks. Thank you, minders. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope this brought you some happy news with these new things. And thank you so much, patrons, for your support and sponsorship of this channel. We'll see everybody in the next video. Bye-bye.